I want to turn now to two key voices in the Senate, Democratic Senator from New York, Chuck Schumer, and Oklahoma Republican Senator Tom Coburn. Senators, welcome both of you back to Meet the Press. Senator Schumer, let me start with you this morning. Dianne Feinstein, the Senate Intelligence Committee chairwoman, indicated this after the news of Petraeus. I wish President Obama had not accepted this resignation, but I understand and respect the decision. Do you wish he had not resigned over this?
I think I'd leave that decision to General Petraeus. He's been such a hero in so many ways. I've known him. He's a New Yorker. I spent time in Iraq with him. And, you know, your heart breaks for him and his wife. If he thought it was appropriate to resign, I'll leave it with him.
Senator Coburn, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think leadership matters and setting an example, and I don't think he had any choice, given the sensitive nature of everything that he does, that he could have any questions about his character or his integrity. And so I think he did the honorable thing.
Senator Coburn, let me stay with you. The Benghazi questions that Bob Woodward just mentioned with new information this morning portrays his own fact-finding on this, preparing to testify. Both Republicans and Democrats as well, with a lot of questions about the CIA's role, whether there was enough communication, whether there was enough security on the ground, and why not, if that was not the case, that would endanger our personnel there in our consulate. What do you believe about the remaining questions and what role Petraeus still plays in answering them?
Well, I think he needs to answer them. He was obviously the person in charge of the CIA, and he has information that probably other people don't have. So I think it's still going to be important that his input comes into the conclusion and what we find about what went wrong were made. We obviously weren't prepared. I think you have to spend time to find out what happened and how it happened and get to the bottom of it so we don't see this kind of mistake again.
Senator Schumer?
Yeah, I think first we ought to see what Mr. Morell has to say, and is he able to give the committee the information that General Petraeus dug up when he was over there in Iraq, and then we should take it from there.
Let's talk now about the fiscal cliff, where the debate turns in Washington after the election. And let's remind our viewers what we mean when we talk about the fiscal cliff. This is what's happening at the end of the year. The Bush tax cuts expire, so taxes go up. The emergency unemployment benefits end. The 2011 payroll tax holiday expires. The alternative minimum tax kicks in. So taxes automatically go up. Plus, at the same time, you have nearly $1 trillion in spending cuts that are automatic. That's what we mean by the sequester. Half of that in defense, also non-defense cuts are triggered. That's what has to be averted, Senator Coburn. And here's my bottom line question. My view is that if there's a mandate from this election, it's about compromise in Washington. So what pain do Republicans have to accept to get to a deal, in your judgment?
Well, I think you heard the Speaker of the House put forward that they're ready for the president to lead. They're ready to agree to revenue increases. But I think they're also interested in making sure that we downsize appropriately the federal government in terms of its waste. There is no question that we have a government that's twice the size it was 11 years ago. And we can find the money through sequestration or directly from what the House has passed, which is a difference in sequestration, but the same amount. I'd also remind you that the $1 trillion is over 10 years, so it's $100 billion out of a $3.7 trillion budget.
But Senator, let me zero in on my question. Well, I just think it's important before we go through the litany of this. Is the bottom line that Republicans losing this election means, as the president said, that they have to give in and allow taxes to go up on wealthier Americans?
Well, I think they'd already agreed to that. I think you heard John Boehner say that already. We've had votes in the Senate where we've actually gotten rid of tax credits. I think that's a given, and I think the vast majority of Americans agree with that. The question is how do you do that, and how do you allow taxes to rise at the same time you fix the real problem? And the real problem is uncontrolled entitlement spending and a government that has grown massively, not just under this administration, under Republican administration.
Well, let me turn to Senator Schumer on this point.
You have to approach both sides of it.
Let me turn to Senator Schumer. I'm going to ask you the same question. If the mandate is compromised, what do Democrats have to be prepared to accept as a painful outcome in order to achieve compromise?
Well, I agree with you. The mandate is compromise. That's why we have a divided House and Senate. And I think if the House stands for anything, it's cut government spending, as Tom Coburn said, and I think we're going to have to do more of it. We heard the mandate in 2010 where it was a clear mandate, cut spending, and we did. We cut $900 billion in spending that we didn't like, painful to us. But there's also a clear mandate on the other side, David, and that is the president campaigned on letting the Bush tax cuts expire above people of $250,000 income. He campaigned on it clearly. He didn't back off from it. The exit polls showed that 60% of the people agreed with it, and I think that's the other side. And what's, in my judgment, maybe a little different than Tom's, what's messed up these agreements is revenues. We never really get real revenues because people believe in some things like dynamic scoring, sort of a counterintuitive view that if you cut taxes, you will get deficit reduction and increased government revenues. It doesn't make sense. I call it Rumpelstiltskin, after the gnome who turned straw into gold. It's a fairy tale. So we need the Republicans to do in 2012 what we did in 2010. We hear the mandate, continue to cut spending, but they have to hear the mandate, real revenues, not this kind of stuff like dynamic scoring, which Speaker Boehner did mention.
I've talked to a top Republican in the Senate in recent days who said, look, the president's got some leverage on taxes, but it was nice to hear him say, this source said, that he talked about more revenue, not necessarily higher rates. You've talked about that this week as well, Senator Schumer. Could you live with not raising tax rates and finding a way to get enough revenue through closing loopholes and by other means to raise revenues? Yeah,
well, it's not mathematically possible if you stick by the other tenet, which both parties agree on, which is not raise taxes from people below $250,000. In other words, if you're going to get to the Bowles-Simpson number of $4 trillion of deficit reduction, which we have to do, and you're not going to increase taxes on the middle class, $250,000 or lower, which we shouldn't. Their incomes are shrinking. The only way to do it, the only way mathematically I've seen to do it, is go to that 39.6% rate. If someone can show another plan that doesn't do that, we could look at it, but no one's shown one because I think it's mathematically impossible.
Senator Coburn, your thoughts on that?
Well, I put out a year and a half ago the subsidies for the rich and famous, where the well-connected, well-heeled in this country have benefited themselves through the tax code. And we can get $39 billion a year just through very simple changes in terms of tax credits and limiting total tax deductions. And that's the other way, which Chuck has not recognized, is if you limit total deductions and exemptions for those above $250,000. What you can essentially do is raise all sorts of money, which nobody really wants to increase revenues because it does have a negative, detrimental effect on the economy. But in fact, that's the part of the bargain that you have to do, and we're at historic lows on revenues. So I've always agreed to it. I voted for the Simpson-Bowles. I've been a part of the Gang of Six, a Gang of Eight. I agree that we have to go there, but how we go there is very important in terms of the incentives for capital investment in this country, and we have to do it in a way that does not diminish that.
Let me turn quickly to lessons from this election and where things go beyond this negotiation over the fiscal matters. Senator Schumer, immigration. Are we going to get comprehensive immigration reform? It sounds like, if you listen to the House Speaker, they've had a change of heart. They want a comprehensive plan. Is there news to be made on this?
Yeah, I think so. Senator Graham and I have talked, and we are resuming the talks that were broken off 2 years ago. We had put together a comprehensive, detailed blueprint on immigration reform. It had the real potential for bipartisan support based on the theory that most Americans are for legal immigration but very much against illegal immigration. Our plan, just to be quick, does 4 things. First of all, close the border. Make sure that's shut. Second, make sure that there is a non-forgeable document so that employers can tell who is legal and who is illegal. And once they hire someone illegally, throw the book at them. Third, on legal immigration, that'll stop illegal immigration in its tracks. Third, on legal immigration, let in the people we need, whether they be engineers from our universities, foreign, or people to pick the crops. And fourth, a path to citizenship that's fair, which says you have to learn English, You have to go to the back of the line. You got to have a job, and you can't commit crimes. Graham and I are talking to our colleagues about this right now, and I think we have a darn good chance using this blueprint to get something done this year. The Republican Party has learned that being anti-illegal, anti-immigrant doesn't work for them politically, and they know it.
Senator Coburn, what is the lesson for your party from this election?
You have to demonstrate what you're for, not what you're against. I think that's the key ingredient, and sell a vision that's positive for America, not a negative vision about what's wrong with America. I think you have to have both, but we didn't sell a positive vision. We didn't explain to people what we're for. And I think that's the one thing that I took away from the election, is that, and that's what was lacking.
Do you see, Senator Schumer, very quickly, a role for Governor Romney in this process? Would you like to see the president bring him in to say the negotiations over the fiscal cliff?
Well, I don't know about that, but I would like to see him speak up. I think you could see him struggling in the general election. The hard right had moved him so far over on issues like immigration, and I didn't think his heart was in it. So he could help. You know, we need forces to help. When either party moves too far over, they lose. Democrats too far left, Republicans too far right. You need some mainstream Republican voices. You need the business community to speak up on the fiscal cliff and the need for revenues. You need people like Romney and Jeb Bush and others to talk about doing a comprehensive immigration reform so that the Republicans who have the courage to stand up, and Tom Coburn has had that courage, don't just hear from the shrill right. And Graham is willing to do it on immigration. He's going to say that this morning. We need other people to do the same.
We're going to leave it there as this debate continues. Senators, thank you both very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And coming up here, you heard where both sides stand. We're going to have some reaction to these two senators and analysis on where the negotiations go from here. Also, the economic stakes. If lawmakers can't get a deal, what does it mean to all of us? We'll check in with the host of CNBC's Mad Money. That's Jim Cramer. Also, we'll talk more broadly about the politics post-election and more on this Petraeus scandal that's unfolding from our roundtable. Joaquin Castro, Congressman from Texas. Steve Schmidt, the Republican strategist. Doris Kearns-Goodwin, the historian, of course. More from Bob Woodward and our own Chuck Todd as we continue here on Meet the Press.
Meet the Press is brought to you by Boeing. Boeing honors all who've served and those serving today. Thank you.